So Mikey and I were on a road trip for a family wedding at the beginning of month, headed to Estes Park, Colorado. And we didn't rush there, we didn't rush back. We decided to take the scenic route and overplanned our trip with too many things to do, visiting friends along the way, and a couple of side attractions that included classic car museums, Dorothy's house, and the Oz Museum in Kansas. You gotta see the Oz Museum, and several scenic vistas. So we stopped to take in the Arkansas River Valley with its majestic cliffs, verdant green forests, and just these enormously grand long-distance views of Petit Jean State Park. It's located in the Arkansas Ozarks. The beauty is simply undescribable. You have to be there to experience it. Viewing the sprawling landscape, smelling the air, touching the rocks and the trees, and hugging a tree. Yes, that did happen. Listening to the breeze and the birds, swatting away the flies, and staying away from the precarious rocky cliff where the fence was like teetering on the edge. Even though Mikey wanted to go to the edge, I was like 10 feet away from the edge. It was a whole body experience. You felt being there in person. And it was a spiritual experience. My sense of self disappeared for a moment, at least momentarily. It was overwhelming, and I was able to experience this breathtaking vista of the gorgeous beauty that nature, that earth had created. Such experiences draw you outside yourself into the beauty of earth's majestic realm. Jews, Christians, or Muslims might call it the beauty of God's green creation. For religious naturalists like myself, or pantheists or panentheists, the experience evokes a very deep spiritual reverence for the marvel that nature is. And like with all spiritual experiences, I can describe it to you, but I can't share it with you because it's one of those experiences that you have to experience for yourself. The most famous Zen koan about nature is probably Buddha's flower sermon. The sermon is set on Vulture Peak. So what's Vulture Peak? For Buddhists, Vulture Peak carries similar significance as Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, or Moses' trek up Mount Sinai where he met the Holy One and received the Asirat Hadibrot, literally the 10 statements that we call the 10 Commandments. Or Muhammad's meditations on the Mount of Light near Mecca, where the revelations of the Quran began for him. Or even the ziggurats of Mesoamerica. These are all sacred places where humans go up the mountain and have an unpredicted, unplanned experience of some sort, what Maslow calls peak experiences. We all have these peak experiences in our lives, and they sometimes include life-changing spiritual transformations. So in the flower sermon on Vulture Peak, Shakyamuni the Buddha remains entirely silent. He picks up a flower and he shows it to the gathered assembly and says nothing. And they look at it, confused. What's he doing up there? And one of his disciples looks at the flower and smiles and gets it. I would interpret it as a simple appreciation of natural beauty. Our Unitarian minister, the Reverend Ralph Waldo Emerson, most likely would call that experience as one of goodness, truth, and beauty. He writes in his 1844 essay, Nature, truth and goodness and beauty are but different faces of the same all capitalized. Goodness, truth, and beauty become the Unitarian spiritual religious quest for the entire 19th century because of this teaching of Emerson. And it's precipitated on the experience of nature. The next day, after our visit to the Arkansas Ozarks, we unexpectedly visited the Arkansas River a second time. We were driving across the Great Plains in Colorado, headed to Pueblo, approaching the foothills of the Rockies, but we couldn't see the mountains because everything was engulfed in clouds, and some of them were storm clouds. And along the route, we crossed a long, low highway bridge over a wide, dry gulch with sparse vegetation. We stopped there as well and took a look what was going on and used the rest area. The grasses, the wildflowers, the forbs were small, but really sturdy, hardy plants that were able to survive on the rare scarcity of water that does come that area, because the Rocky Mountains basically wring out the clouds, and so there's little water left on the other side. But these plants were strong, and they survived, and they were small, and they were beautiful, and they covered that entire gulch, all those crevices entirely. Nature in a different way, spreading across the horizon, filled with vegetation. And then we saw the sign. We didn't know what we were crossing, and then we saw the sign that that tiny, tiny stream in the middle of this huge gulch was the Arkansas River, which, when the torrents of rain come in, fills the entire gulch with a raging torrent and flows downstream and flows into the Ozarks and creates that massive green, lush gulch valley in the Ozark Mountains. But there was such a great difference. The difference between the rich green valley in the Ozarks and the parched gulch, both fed and sculpted by this single Arkansas River. Could this really be the same river that created both of these landscapes? When I later reflected on those experiences over those couple of days, I remembered the Buddhist teaching of anicca, impermanence. Change is not something that just happens to life. Change is the very nature of life. Nothing remains static. Letting go of our struggles for control ultimately leads to inner peace. Change is the only constant in life. And the Arkansas River is the symbol of the constant change in life that we all experience. We tend to ignore and forget about. Sometimes we have the phrase to remind us about that, this too shall pass. And in our days, in these dark politics of our own days, we need to remember that spiritual truth. This too shall pass. And so we come together today to celebrate the solstice, to celebrate flower communion, the beauty of nature, to bless our garden, a vestige of beauty here in Brighton. We're 925 feet above sea level in Brighton. Amanda shared the story about how the flower communion ritual began in 1923 in Prague, former Czechoslovakia, 103 years ago. And this is now a tradition that Unitarian churches worldwide celebrate. By the way, there's another historical note for our tradition this week. This past Wednesday, June 10th, was the 461st anniversary of the first Unitarian denomination, the Minor Reformed Church of Poland, Lithuania, which was founded in 1565. But here we are in this time, in this space, looking out these windows into our garden and all the greenery around us. For a moment, let's just forget about all those outside cares of the world, whatever worries we have, whatever is going to be cooked for lunch or dinner or whatever else, and be here now. Just say that to yourself once silently. Be here now. Sarah shared the meaning of our native garden for her and for our congregation. as she and countless volunteers have been putting together and growing and nurturing for us, and not for us, for the butterflies, for the insects, for the bees, for the entire web of life and existence. We are a green sanctuary congregation. That is one of our core definitions of ourselves. We strive to work with, to live rightly with Mother Nature. We are committed to treading lightly on our Mother Earth. We seek to minimize our carbon footprint. And we seek to restore environmental justice for all those communities, for all those people who are impacted by the human abuse of nature. In our covenant, we promise to create beloved community by being in right relationship with each other. Likewise, as a green sanctuary, we seek to live in right relationship with our holy Mother Earth, taking only what we need, leaving no trace, and sharing her abundance with the entire wide world. And yet we acknowledge on days like today, on Flower Communion Sunday, on the Solstice, which is coming up next weekend, admittedly, we live in a world that is so severely impacted by global warming and climate change. This week, the Palisades fire near Los Angeles has again been in the news. The ordeal that those people experience is still not over for so many of them. And with the weather that swept across the Midwest, every other day, lines and lines of storms and thunderstorms and severe weather and tornadoes this past week, we're reminded of our abuse of Mother Nature and the impact that's had on our environment. And we remember all those people who've been impacted by all these waves of storms and how they're struggling. And I heard from friends of mine in Chicago that they have been in the Chicago suburbs, that they have been without power for 3 days, and they're still waiting for it to come back. As a Green Sanctuary congregation, we maintain a keen focus on our own environmental efforts. We use, or we try to use, environmentally friendly cleaning chemicals. They sometimes work, they sometimes don't. We avoid using microplastics and forever chemicals. We compost, we recycle what we can, and we use washable dishes and silverware, not the disposable stuff. Those are simple steps that we here at CUB take to preserve our environment. CUB is also investigating and getting solar panels that would minimize electrical power from fossil fuels and would also reduce our electrical costs in the long run. So now here's what we're going to do today to actually celebrate our Flower Communion service. In a moment, we'll bless the gardens and the flowers right here from the sanctuary, right here in our places, using our hymnals, and we're going to read Norbert Chopik's Flower Communion prayer together, facing the garden. Children, the front row has been reserved for the children this morning. Children are going to distribute native seed packets for us to plant. We can plant them here wherever we want on CUB's property in the garden. We can take them home to our own gardens and plant the native seed packets there. We can give them to our neighbors. And these seeds, these plants, will remind us of our interconnection with our garden by having the same seeds, the same plants growing in our homes wherever we may live. And then we're going to dance into the garden. Where's my prop? We're going to dance into the garden, and I don't know if it's raining or not, but we have the umbrellas, and we can dance in the garden with the umbrellas, singing in the rain as we dance along into the garden. But please be mindful, as we dance into the garden, stay on the mulch paths, because there are lots of seeds and lots of plants already growing in the black, muddy dirt out there. So we're going to stay on the paths. And I invite you, as you go out and dance into the garden, right now we have a lull in the rain, to dance in through the trellis. Can you guys see the trellis over there? That's like the formal entrance to the garden. And then stay on the paths. And then as you come out, you'll notice there's one parking spot that's blocked off, that is the back entrance to the garden with a mulch path there. Come back through that. And if going out into the garden is too much for you, you can't do that today, come to the window. That's the time we have the windows open. That's the time we're facing sideways to be able to look through the windows. Just look through the windows and dance here or sing here and watch the people dance out there as we dance through the garden and come back in. And so let's turn to the Flower Communion Prayer by Norbert Chopik, and I don't have the number written down. Is it in the 723? Thank you. Yes. Could we read this together, please? In the name of Providence, which implants in the seed the future of the flower, and in our hearts the longing for people to live in harmony. In the name of the highest, in whom we move and who makes the father and mother, the brother and sister, lover and loner what they are. In the name of sages and great religious leaders who sacrifice their lives to hasten the coming of the age of mutual respect, let us renew our resolution sincerely to be real brothers and sisters, regardless of any kind of bar which estranges us from each other. In this holy resolve, may we be strengthened knowing that we are God's family, that one Spirit, the Spirit of love, unites us, and endeavor for a more perfect and more joyful life. Amen.